Emily was in for a shock. One minute she was a content housewife living a stable life with her husband David, and the next her in-laws were telling her to leave and David was handing her divorce papers. It all felt surreal. How could everything change so suddenly? But in the midst of the devastation, Emily started to feel something else. A spark of opportunity. She had been living a life that wasn't entirely hers. Now it was time to take control. "Leave right now," her in-laws insisted, their voices cold and firm. To her surprise, David handed her a thick envelope. "I've already filled out my part. Hurry up and sign the papers," he said, his tone strangely calm. Emily was speechless. This wasn't how she had imagined her life unfolding. The man she had married, the man who had once been her everything, was now turning his back on her. Yet as she looked at the divorce papers, something inside her clicked. Instead of despair, she felt a surge of determination. Without a second thought, she signed the papers. Her heart raced, but it also filled with a strange sense of relief. This was the end, but it was also the beginning. Emily was 34 years old. She had been a housewife for 5 years, married to David, with no children. They had lived a simple, quiet life in a modest home, just the two of them. David had worked tirelessly at a grueling job, where long hours and low pay drained him both mentally and physically. She had watched him suffer and had tried everything she could to help. Emily had always been resourceful. She started doing small freelance jobs from home like data entry. It wasn't much, but it helped cover the bills. But that wasn't enough for her. She wanted more. She wanted to change things for both of them. So she dove into video editing, teaching herself the skills she needed. Slowly but surely she built up a steady stream of clients and the money started to come in. But Emily didn't stop there. She began investing. At first it was small amounts, but as she learned more, the investments grew. Her days were spent working on video editing projects, managing investments and studying the markets. It wasn't easy, but she felt accomplished. And as the money flowed in, she began to feel a sense of independence she had never known before. One evening, Emily decided to talk to David. She wanted to take the burden off him. "I can cover the rent," she told him gently. "You don't need to work at that place anymore. The conditions are terrible." David seemed confused, then defensive. "What do you mean? Our finances are fine. You only make pocket money with your editing, right?" Emily smiled, but inside she was anxious. "Actually, I've been doing well with my investments. I have enough to take care of things for both of us. You don't need to keep forcing yourself into that job. You deserve better." David's expression softened, a hint of disbelief crossing his face. "Really?" Emily nodded. "Yes, really. You've worked so hard and now it's my turn to take care of us." David smiled at her, a weight lifting off his shoulders. He had already submitted his resignation letter at work. They were finally free from the job that had drained him for so long. Emily felt proud of him. Things were finally going to get better, or so she thought. But as the days passed, David became distant. The spark that had once been there in their relationship started to fade. He seemed more withdrawn, and no matter how hard Emily tried to reach out, he pulled away. It didn't take long for her to realize that something had changed. The decision to leave his job had been hers, but it felt like David had lost something along the way. The burden had shifted, and Emily hadn't anticipated how much it would affect their relationship. The truth hit her hard. David didn't need her to take control of everything. He needed a partner who could share the load, not one who would do everything for him. She had changed their lives, but in doing so she had unintentionally altered the balance of their marriage. The road ahead wasn't as clear as it once seemed. "Hey, can we move in with my parents?" David suddenly asked one evening. Emily was taken aback. "Wait, what do you mean? You want us to move into your parents' house?" David nodded, an eager look in his eyes. "I've been working so hard, but I haven't had the time to take care of them. This condo is perfect. We can all live there together. The rent is high, but we can afford it." Emily stared at the flyer David handed her. The condo was beautiful, no doubt, but the rent was a staggering $5,000. That's too expensive, she protested. Even if I'm doing well with my investments, we don't need to live like that. I want to save for our future. For children. Besides, I didn't expect to live with your parents. David's face fell. But I want to help my parents, Emily. They're getting older and I can't keep ignoring them. Please help me out. Reluctantly, Emily agreed. She had hoped this would bring them closer, but deep down she knew it might be the biggest mistake of her life. I'm so glad that you both are enjoying this new place. My parents, despite being overjoyed with their new life in the tower condo, were incredibly excited the entire day when they first moved in. I'm so proud of you, David. You must be making a fortune to afford such a luxurious lifestyle, they said. I stood next to my husband and nudged him with my elbow. David awkwardly explained that the rent for this place wasn't coming from his earnings. At that moment, both my in-laws looked surprised, their expressions filled with confusion. So it's not from your earnings, David? They asked. Oh, it's actually Emily's earnings, David confessed. My in-laws were shocked when they heard the truth, but I felt a sense of relief. David had told them up front rather than letting them find out through deceit. Initially they apologized, especially to me, and I felt a bit uncomfortable. I couldn't help but feel guilty for putting them in that position, so I told David to reassure them not to worry too much. I had originally decided to help David with his struggles at work, and I thought it would be good for my in-laws to live more freely, which would also make David happy. But my in-laws were far from content with that. After David spoke to them, they grew bolder and more demanding. I like my pasta softer. Don't forget the beer, and I need mayonnaise too, they said. I want that particular brand of bag. Can you buy it for me, Emily? Oh, and a golf club too. It seemed as if they saw me as nothing more than a money-making machine, someone who could earn for them and fulfill their every wish. I wasn't about to let that happen. I said firmly, I'll do my best with housework, but I can't do everything. I want to be a good wife and take care of the chores, but we need to be strict with money. If we're not, they'll just become spoiled, and I won't allow that to happen. My in-laws, however, were not pleased with my response. They became grumpy and began complaining to David about how unreasonable I was. Why is she always at home? He says she makes a lot of money, but I doubt it. I bet she's just gambling. I can't believe she's acting like she's successful when she's only been lucky. It seemed that's what they had been saying behind my back. Meanwhile, David had changed jobs, opting for one that paid less but didn't require overtime. This new job meant he no longer had to worry about rent or living expenses, allowing him to spend his entire salary freely. His wardrobe became more extravagant with tailor-made suits, designer shoes and bags. David, who had always loved fashion, was thrilled to indulge himself. Since David was living so freely, my parents-in-law began complaining to him about why they couldn't live the same way or afford the luxury items he was buying. Of course, David turned to me asking if I could buy things for them as part of taking care of them. But I refused. If you want to take care of them, why don't you do it? You've been spending your salary freely, so now it's your chance to show them how much you care, I told him. David frowned at my response, but he didn't argue because what I said was true. If we started buying things for his parents, we wouldn't be able to afford his own luxuries anymore. So he asked me to take care of them, but since I refused, David began to grow increasingly harsh with me. You've been sitting in front of the computer all the time. You're done as a woman if you don't even wear makeup anymore. You think it doesn't matter since you're always at home, but if you keep dressing like this, we won't match anymore. What do you mean we won't match? We're always at home. What does matching even matter? I retorted. That's how women like you get uglier and uglier. You should always strive to be beautiful, David snapped. David began insulting me at every opportunity, and my in-laws noticed and joined in. Why can't you cook better? You might make money, but you're no good as a wife if you can't handle the chores. At least do your job as a wife properly. Both my in-laws piled on the criticism, and honestly I was fed up. So I decided to stand up for myself. But it's thanks to me and my earnings that you're all able to live this way now. That's the most important thing. I mean, Linda, you're physically healthy but not working, and you don't do housework either. And George, you quit your job. What would happen to you if I wasn't around? I'm not asking for respect, but I don't deserve to be criticized like this. When I said this, my in-laws were stunned, their faces turning red, and they were unable to say anything. What I had said was completely true. Afterward, my in-laws started speaking behind my back whenever I wasn't around. Their voices were loud enough for me to overhear, especially when they gathered in the living room. Who does she think she is? That woman makes fun of us all the time, and it really pisses me off. Just the other day she was mocking us. She's changed. She's gotten cocky just because she made money from gambling. So, if she can make that much money, then we should be able to make a lot too. If we study a little and start trading FX, right? Yeah, exactly. She did it, so we can do it too. We should start now. I couldn't believe my ears. Investing and gambling are two completely different things. It's not something you can learn in a day or by studying a little. George and David, both working in companies, should have known better. From that point on, my in-laws and my husband became increasingly competitive with me. Even at breakfast they'd say things like, "I need to check the stock prices, I have to see them before anyone else." And then they'd pull out their laptops at the dining table to begin checking. I started to feel like an outsider in my own family. If they were going to hustle against me like this, I didn't belong there anymore. But in the middle of all this, I was about to uncover a shocking and unexpected truth. One day when I decided to take a break and meet up with a friend, I heard there was an event for my favorite anime. I needed a break from work, so I decided to go. As I walked down the street, I unexpectedly saw my husband standing in front of a branded store. He had just walked out carrying another expensive item. He should have been investing that money, not spending it on luxury goods. I stood there, staring at him, lost in my thoughts, when suddenly a young woman appeared behind him and wrapped her arms around him. My heart sank and panic surged through me. I quickly ducked into the shadows with my friend and pulled out my phone to take photos. I couldn't believe my eyes. Things had not been great between David and me, but I never imagined it would come to this. I had always believed, despite our issues, that he loved me as his wife. I was wrong. David wasn't just neglecting me, he was in an intimate relationship with another woman. It wasn't just me he was neglecting. It was his entire commitment to our marriage. The thought of being with a man who would do this to me, living with his parents, treating me this way, became unbearable. From that day on, I began looking for my own apartment, a place where I could finally live on my terms. I stopped caring about my in-laws, stopped doing any housework. Why should I? They had never appreciated me, and now with everything I had learned, I was done. My in-laws were furious, and David too was angry. Then one day they called me into a meeting. "What's with your attitude lately? Every word you say makes me angry," Linda shouted. "You're too cocky for a wife. Mom and Dad are right. You're getting carried away." She raised her voice further. "I hate everything about you," she continued. "What do you mean? I only live with my own family?" She said, "Leave now." To my shock, my in-laws decided to kick me out. Even David, surprisingly, had prepared divorce papers for me to sign. I filled out my part. "Hurry up and sign," he said. It wasn't something I wanted, but it presented an opportunity. I signed the divorce papers immediately. "Well done. Now just leave quickly," he said as I began packing my bags. The in-laws couldn't contain their excitement. "Now this house will finally be ours. With her out of the way, let's go out for an expensive dinner to celebrate," they said loudly enough for me to hear. I packed my things without a second thought. "For now, I'll take only what I need. I'll call the movers to take the rest another day," I said. The in-laws looked at me with smug expressions, laughing. "Do it quickly," they taunted. It was strange how smug they were, considering they would be the ones losing in the end. I thought to myself, they're just so foolish. But either way, I was preparing to show them just how wrong they were. I went to my parents' house for the time being. Later, I returned with the movers to collect the rest of my belongings. This place is finally ours. David grinned widely. I replied, by the way, we still haven't finished talking about the divorce, and placed the evidence of David's affair on the table. The photos I had gathered from the detective agency. David was horrified by the evidence. We'll get the divorce, but only after I get the proper alimony for what you've done, I said calmly. My in-laws, who had no idea about David's affair, looked pale. How do you know about it? David asked in disbelief. You thought you wouldn't get caught because I was always home. You weren't too clever walking around town with her wrapped around you so confidently, I shot back. We'll talk more through our lawyers, I added. But then my in-laws interrupted. David, ignore everything she says. We have a chance to get back at her, they said. David, surprisingly, had a suggestion that shocked me. If I invest $50,000 in margin trading, that could lead to hundreds of thousands in profit. She's going to be in big trouble if she keeps up like that. I was about to give them advice but decided against it. I thought, you'll make mistakes, but that's how you learn to invest. It might be expensive for David and his parents, but it would be a lesson for them. I hope it goes well for you, I said as I made my way to the front door. They followed me, taunting, we'll be more successful than you now. I ignored them and walked out, heading back to my parents' house. Later, through my lawyer, I filed for alimony from both David and his mistress. My lawyer made it clear that David was entirely at fault, and there would be no division of property. To my surprise, David and his family agreed to pay me the full alimony without any argument about property. Perhaps they had just closed a successful deal, I thought. But as it turned out, they hadn't, and they were settling the alimony first before anything else. For my part, I was grateful I didn't have to pay them anything. The alimony came through quickly, and I decided to invest the money wisely. I was able to earn even more and save up again. I moved into a modest apartment. No need for a fancy tower condo. It was a simple place, but it was mine, and that's all I needed. From that moment on, I spent my days living freely just the way I wanted. Then, out of nowhere, my ex-husband contacted me. He must have thought I had forgotten to block his number. Hesitantly, I answered, "Hello. Please help me," he pleaded. I screwed up big time with margin trading. I'm $50,000 in debt. I'm completely sunk. This is a disaster. How did you manage to gamble like that, especially after all those years of winning? I asked, shocked. He sighed. For the record, it wasn't gambling. I studied it properly, made calculations, predictions, and invested smartly. You can't just invest like you're playing the lottery and expect to win. Unbelievable, I responded. And now what? Please come back. If this continues, we're going to lose the contract for the $5,000 tower condo. That might be the best outcome, don't you think? Because you can't afford it on your own earnings. My parents aren't convinced, and they're going to pressure me into doing another round of margin trading, he said. Well, you better stop them, I said, but that's no longer my problem. It's your job to deal with your parents now. Goodbye. Before he could say anything more, I had already hung up. Later, our mutual friend told me that David's parents, despite his pleas, went ahead with another round of margin trading. It failed again, adding another $30,000 in debt. Naturally, the condo they had wanted was also gone, rented under David's name. This wasn't a win for me at all. David and his family were now buried in debt, with David using all his income just to repay it. His mistress, unsurprisingly, abandoned him. He had to work from morning till night, living the same miserable life he had before. His parents, too, were working nonstop to pay off their debts. It was exactly what they deserved, and I had zero sympathy for them. At the end of it all, they finally understood the reality of investments, but it was too late. They wouldn't have the resources to invest again in the future. Meanwhile, I continued to thrive through my investments. I had earned enough that I no longer needed to work. From now on, I planned to focus on my hobbies and live a comfortable, semi-retired life. It made me wonder, Why do men always look down on their wives, thinking they're more capable than we are? To me, supporting a wife who knows how to make money would lead to a much happier marriage. But David? He was just another man who cheated on his wife, an idiot who couldn't control himself. I'm so glad I left him. I hope he regrets everything while I enjoy my own life in peace and retirement. What do you do when the person you loved, the one you thought you could count on, turns out to be the one dragging you down? When the person who was supposed to be your partner in life becomes a burden, using you and then betraying you. Emily spent years believing that by helping her husband David she was doing the right thing. She worked hard, built a career and even covered their expenses so he could leave his toxic job. But in return, all she got was resentment, distance, and eventually betrayal. The turning point came when David, instead of being grateful, asked her to continue supporting his parents while he indulged in luxuries at her expense. The final straw came when Emily discovered David's affair. That moment shattered the illusion of their marriage. But instead of wallowing in despair, Emily took action. She walked away, filed for alimony and built a life for herself. Now she's thriving, using the money she earned wisely and living life on her own terms. But what about David and his family? They're drowning in debt, forced to face the consequences of their actions. David is struggling in the same miserable job, while his parents, who had relied on Emily's generosity, are now paying the price. So what do you think? If you were in Emily's shoes, would you have stayed or walked away sooner? Do you believe it's possible to build a healthy relationship where both partners truly support each other? Let's talk about it in the comments. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more.